she knows.
Oh, she just knew
Yeah,
you here.
yeah, I saw
Okay.
her.
So do you know what order she
said-
got y'all sitting in?
No,
Maybe it don't matter to her. I don't know.
she'll give directions.
Sure. Okay, but see, don't hesitate to sit down, my brother.
right.
How's the mistress, man?
She's doing fine. She's out there.
Okay, she's out there somewhere. Okay.
No way I could make it without you.
Can't even get up in the morning.
No way I could make it without you.
Where would my life be without you?
No way I could make it without you.
I can't even breathe without you.
No way I could make it without you.
Can't even talk without you.
No way I could make it without you.
Every day I need you.
No way
Hey,
without you. No way I could make it without you. There's no way I could make it. No way.
Make it without
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all, first of all, so much for coming out. On behalf of Covenant Nation, Springfield Baptist Church ministry leaders, and our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Eric Rundle Lee, I am Deacon Dr. Harold Davis, co-leader of Covenant Nation, and I welcome you to this session of Man Talk 10. We hope and expect that this will be an impactful and transformational program. Now, we're not so naive that we would believe that every question will get answered or every problem will be solved. We hope all of us will leave here today with a better understanding of what we should be doing to protect the things that God has entrusted in our care, our finances, our properties, our faith, our good name, and our church. Now, Proverbs 13:22 says, a good person leaves an inheritance for their grandchildren, and a sinner's wealth passes to the godly. I think this speaks both in terms of financial stability and moral legacy, while the wealth of a sinner is eventually stored up for the righteous. This verse contrasts the enduring positive legacy of a righteous person with the transient nature of the wealth of the sinner, which eventually will wind up in the hands of the just. There's all kinds of numbers that tell the story, whether there be numbers of having to do with the percentage of black people who own homes versus the percentage of whites who own homes. And even we're actually the lowest group. We're actually down somewhere, but after whites come Asians, and then Hispanics, and then black people. Our weekly salaries is about $200. The average weekly salary is about $200 less than what a white person makes. And then not only that, but when you average that up, $200 across the year, I think it's almost $13,000. So is it any wonder, since we're starting off behind, that we need to be very circumspect with the gifts that God has given us? So what are we doing with what we have? Yes, we all want more. I pray frequently, God, increase my territory. But what I hear ringing in my ear is, what are you doing with the territory I gave you? So brothers and sisters, for those of us who have children, and if those children have children, don't you want to leave a legacy for them? Not only in terms of money, but in terms of finances, in terms of property, in terms of culture, and in terms of this great church that we're members of. One of the things I can hear greatly in my ear from my father, who died when I was 11, he would say, boy, don't you go over there and ruin my name. Because my daddy was dirt poor, but he prayed on his name that you could not ruin his name. And so legacy to me speaks of not just finances and property, it speaks of culture and names, and it speaks of what we are wrapped up in Springfield Baptist Church. So I thank you all for coming out today. We hope this program will be impactful. Thank you all so much to every speaker who has participated. Thank you to every ministry that's represented. And now Dr. Hayward, my co-leader for Covenant Nation, will come forward and speak very briefly on what Covenant Nation is and who we are. And just in case he doesn't say it, we meet tomorrow night, Monday night on Zoom. So if you don't know about Covenant Nation, you can watch us, participate with us. You don't have to watch us, you can participate on Monday night on Zoom. Dr. Hayward, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Davis. I also welcome you. Thank you for coming, but I also thank our speakers for coming, all of you. The Covenant Nation Ministry, we are the men's ministry of Springfield Baptist Church, and as Dr. Davis said, he and I co-lead this ministry, but we have two other individuals, Minister Charles Ware and Deacon James Carter. Could y'all please stand? They complete our leadership team. Our mission is to provide an environment where iron can sharpen iron. This is stated in the Bible in Proverbs 27:17. But what does this mean? It means that men can check men. Our goal is very simple, and that is to make us better Christian men. But we're not like any ordinary group. It has to be evidenced by your changed behavior, and I've noticed quite a bit of that. How do we do this? Currently, we meet every second and fourth Monday night at 7 p.m. each month by Zoom, where we study the Bible, we read and analyze books such as Disciplines of a Godly Man by R. Kent Hughes, No More Excuses by Tony Dungy. We have dedicated presentations on various topics such as marriage, one that we just completed, divorce, health, to include a thorough explanation of COVID-19, and sometimes we just talk. We have periodic fellowship gatherings where we eat and chat and just have fun together. We also fellowship by participating in other ministries such as the Servolution Army that's responsible for the food drive, and also the music ministry as well as others. And we have this, our annual conference called Man Talk. And I would imagine the big elephant in the room today is asking the question, what's this Man Talk all about? This answer is simple. Our initial conferences were for men only. Then we realized that what affects the man also affects the entire family. So we broadened our conferences to include the family. Now, the man is the head of the household, thus the name Man Talk. How do you join us? If you are a man and also a member of Springfield Baptist Church, then you're already a member of the Covenant Nation Ministry. However, if you want to be active and participate with us, you must request to join us and get your name on the roster on RAM. Now, we have a couple of members today. Could y'all stand up? We have our mission statements that give you all the information you need. Brother Ware, Carter, over here. If you're interested in joining us, please get one of these forms. We send out weekly updates to let you know what our ministry is doing. And now I have the distinct honor of introducing a young man to you who will give us some words of encouragement and our prayer. He has been pastoring this church, the Springfield Baptist Church, for a quarter of a century, plus 1 year. And we get to honor him tomorrow on his 26th anniversary. Please join me in welcoming our senior pastor, Dr. Eric Wendell Lee.
Mic number 7. Good morning, everybody. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it. I welcome you each to Springfield Baptist Church. In 1974, my parents made a very pivotal decision that impacted my childhood and consequently the rest of my life. In 1974, they purchased their first home, at 2944 Etna Lane in Decatur, Georgia. That's 30032. That's right around the corner from South DeKalb Mall. That's where Down by Law and 5%, all them folk came up in the 1970s and 1980s. That purchase changed my life. I don't have any memory of ever moving as a child until after we graduated high school. I don't have any memory of lights being out. I don't have any memory of water being turned off. That purchase was a stabilizing factor, and home purchases are still the bedrock and foundation of wealth building. There is a 30% difference between white home ownership and black home ownership in the city of Atlanta. We like to consider Atlanta a mecca for black people, but guess what? Black people don't own Atlanta. As a matter of fact, 30% of the homes in Metro Atlanta are now owned by private equity firms. And so in 1974, my life was changed. And as I grew up in the security of that home, Saturday mornings were extremely sacred for me. As a matter of fact, we started planning for Saturday morning on Friday night, because what we would do is take Kool-Aid and put it in a cup and freeze it, and we made homemade popsicles. Somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about, for Saturday morning. Because on Saturday morning, there was a bevy of cartoon programs where children could be entertained for hours. There were no 24-hour cartoon networks. If you were gonna watch cartoons, you had to watch it at various times. And Saturday morning was the day. And we were looking for Fat Albert and the Cosby, we were looking for Looney Tunes. We were looking for all of these, Hanna-Barbera, all these cartoons. And one of the cartoons that I would always look forward to on Saturday morning was the Smurfs. I got into Smurf culture. I got into Smurf language, and the Smurfs were just a bevy, a wonderful community, but there was always an adversary against that community, and that adversary, say his name, was Gargamel. Well, y'all do know that there are modern-day Smurfs, and there are modern-day Gargamels. And the Gargamels of this world want to shrink what we own and shrink what we can give to our children. But I thank God today that the Saturday mornings from 40 years ago that still have an impact on my life, that we have an opportunity on this Saturday morning to have an impact over the next 2 generations of our. Imagine that your family will be founded and stabilized by what happens on this Saturday morning. Thank you for coming out and spending this impactful time. I promise you it will matter decades from now because of the information that you're going to absorb and the actions that you're going to take. I also want to make you aware, and we didn't advertise this, but because we are trying to be as impactful as possible, I just 30 minutes ago asked our media team to stream this live. And so if you've got family members, if you've got cousins, if you've got friends, if you've got children all around this nation, please send them to our website at sbcgrowth.church so that they can get this groundbreaking information and they can have a Saturday morning that's going to matter 40 years from now. Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you today because you are the God of our weary years and you are the God of our silent tears. And we thank you, God, that none of those years and none of those tears are shed in vain. Because today, God, we've drawn a line in the sand, and it is our belief that you have called us, God, for such a time as this, that you have called us to build an inheritance for our children's children. And God, we are coming today to carry out that mandate. Now, God, bless the remainder of this service. Touch those who are going to touch us. And we will be so careful to give your name all the glory, all of the honor, and all of the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen, amen, and amen. Would you look at your neighbor and tell them, wake up now. I know it's early. Wake up. We got a lot to cover. We got a lot to cover. Nobody needs to be snoozing. Tell your neighbor, I'm going to be touching you every now and then just to make sure you're alive. We got to get this information. Listen, it's Man Talk. It's Man Talk 10. I want to thank the Covenant Nation for their mandate in this ministry. I want to thank them for their leadership in these summits that we've been having. But I thought, and I'm grateful, we thought that Manpower needed some boss lady energy. And we got the best boss lady in Rockdale County. As a matter of fact, just this past Thursday, she introduced to her community the Reed Law Group building that she has purchased. What she did was she took a church. She bought a church. How many boss ladies do you know have ever bought a church? She bought a church and converted it into a law building on Green Street. I want to make you aware of that, because if you need a defense attorney, if you need the kind of advice that they provide, I stand ready to endorse her and to make her known to you. I'm so grateful that we have, as a board member of the Springfield Baptist Church, a current board member of the Washington Street Community Center, a child of Newton County, and one of the greatest attorneys throughout the state of Georgia. Let's give God praise for Sister Lakia Reed. Come on, give God praise as she comes.
There we go. Is it working? Can you hear me? Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to go ahead and give you all the praise for being here today, because let me tell you something. People like us don't really take advantage of this opportunity. We don't really understand the inner workings of what it is to plan for our generations. And so I just want to say thank you all for being serious about it and being here today. So give yourselves a round of applause. I want to go ahead and take the time to thank all of our speakers and all of our presenters that will be participating today. Please go ahead and clap it up for them. Now, I am a stickler for time, so I'm going to catch us up a little bit. So I wanted to just go ahead and give you all a brief overview as to what's going to come today and what you're going to be learning about, okay? So I'll give you a short little story first. So I've been practicing for 14 years now. And because I'm in a small community, I've had the opportunity to do everything. And when I first started, you open the doors, you got to eat. So you're going to take whatever you can take. I've done family law, criminal defense. I've done probate work. And now we have just been able to streamline our practice where we only represent injured victims. And so the only time that I've ever had to be escorted to my car by a police officer for my protection was a probate case. Because the family lost their patriarch and didn't have a will. And so they were fighting about who's going to keep the house. So you had a couple of siblings living in the house that weren't paying for anything. You had a couple of siblings, particularly one, paying the taxes on the property and all the maintenance. And she was trying to figure out how she was going to get her money back. And it was the biggest fight I had ever seen. And we represented the individual that was paying the taxes and the upkeep of the property. And they wanted that property sold. And so after representing them, the family was really mad and directing their anger to the wrong place, the attorney. And so I want to make sure that no other attorney is being escorted to their car because we didn't leave a will or we didn't plan for what's to come, okay? So I have a short presentation, just a few slides that I want to go over so that we can kind of cover each of the topics that we're going to discuss today. So I can get you to go to the next slide for me. All right. So obviously you know that this is a very powerful conversation. This is one that we just don't like to talk about. We're very uncomfortable talking about the inevitable. We're here today, but there will be a time when we won't be here. And so we need to start having those conversations with our family members about what we have, what we want, and the expectations. And so that starts with preparing your legacy. So Will's Trust in the State. I have a great friend of mine here, Attorney Cheryl Freeman, who is actually an individual that does wills, trust, and estates, among some other things here. And she's located right here in Covington, Georgia, so we appreciate her for being here. But this is the foundation. And some of you may say, you know what? I don't have anything to put in the will. Yes, you do. Whatever it is that you want your children or your loved ones to have, you need to lay it out on paper, because don't leave it to them to split it up, because it destroys families. You don't want your children fighting about, well, who's going to keep daddy's car, or who's going to keep the house, or what about the bank accounts? And so I want you to understand that whatever it is that you have, you need to make sure that you're planning to write that out and let them know who it's going to, okay? Life insurance. There are so many people that we see today with GoFundMe pages on burying loved ones. That is not what we want our community to look like. We need to take care of our own families and empower them. And we want to make sure that we're planning for those things. Don't leave it for your children to plan for your burial expenses. You can do that yourself, and it doesn't take much. So we have a few insurance agents here today that will be able to walk you through policies, and not much. It could be a burial policy. Life insurance that will cover your expenses or your debts so that they don't have to cover them. So I want you to just think about some of those things, because no policy is too small, but not having anything in place is not what we want to do, okay? Power of attorney and advanced medical directives. This is really important because this doesn't have anything to do with death in most situations. I've had a lot of people come to me for power of attorneys just because they may be leaving the country, right? You don't know if you're going to get sick. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and you want to make sure that you have somebody that you can trust to make decisions on your behalf. It could be a general power of attorney, but you want to keep one on file, making sure that somebody has access to your accounts, making sure that they have access to your property, able to pay your bills while you're incapacitated. And so think about some of those things that, you know what, if I got sick tomorrow, what do I need to have done? Who do I need to empower to make these decisions? Because if you're not married, who's going to do that for you? If you are married, or if you're estranged, if you have children, more than one, who's the responsible one? And typically, the one that's not so responsible is the one that steps up and says, I'll do it. So just make sure you appoint somebody that you know is going to carry out your wishes. Advanced medical directives are very important because you don't want to have a procedure and get in there and let doctors make a decision for you, or the person who just brought you to the hospital, right? You want them to know your wishes. And so make that clear before that happens. So we want to plan ahead, okay? So financial planning and benefits, if you go back one more. Financial planning. Making sure that you have a wealth manager or somebody that you can talk to about investing or budgeting, healthcare costs. I mean, Medicaid is a real deal, right? And it will come back to haunt you if you don't plan for these things. So just being mindful of your finances. And it doesn't matter how big or small that is, plan for that. VA benefits. We have Major Ira Baldwin here who's going to talk to you about VA benefits because there are a lot of things that our veterans just don't take advantage of because they don't know. They don't teach you these things, and we want you to be empowered. There are certain benefits that we have that your spouses can have once you pass away. And so knowing those benefits and understanding them and using them to your advantage is something that we want you to consider today. Last but not least, gifting to the church in the Roots campaign. Pastor Lee's going to talk to you more about the Roots campaign, but leaving a legacy for your church, leaving it for the generations to come, because there's nothing to have a life insurance policy and say, you know what, I want to give a piece of this to the church because this is where I want to leave some of my treasure. Or setting aside a gift. How many of you have ever heard of a donor advised fund? 2, 3, 4 hands, right? So that's a way that it's a vehicle to give to a charitable organization. You can do it during your lifetime, but it's a tool that actually saves taxes. How many of you knew that? So a lot of these tools that we have are tax benefits for you today. So we're not talking about just for the people to come behind you, but we're talking about keeping money in our pockets right now, which is legacy building, right? Because I'd rather give it to the church than Uncle Sam. And family, right? We want family to have what they need. We want things that we care about during our lifetime to continue to be cared for. So just keeping those things in mind as we talked about kingdom building and our upcoming Roots campaign. Same thing with scholarships, endowments, and ministry funds. You can have restricted language in any of those funds saying, you know what, I was a part of Covenant Nation, and I want $5,000 to stick with them, right, every year. Or whether it be the dance ministry, wherever your heart is, that's where your purse goes, right? And so just keeping in mind, we want to be able to continue to leave a legacy, not just for our family, but for our community. So I can't wait for you all to hear everyone we have on the stage. So I'm going to go ahead and get our fireside chat started. Now, before we do that, once we finish the fireside chat, we're going to split up into 3 groups. And we have different presenters on different wings of the church. So we have a few presenters on the east wing, some on the west wing, and then we have kingdom building in the atrium, okay? And so you'll have a 20-minute rotation. You'll be able to visit all the tables, ask specific questions to each of these individuals that are here today about their areas of expertise. And then after that 20 minutes, you'll rotate to the next wing. But we'll keep up with the time for you, no worries. All right, and once we finish, we'll come back here to do a wrap-up. So thank you again for being here. All right. So my first question to this panel. Well, first of all, before I get into questions, I'm going to let them briefly introduce themselves, briefly. So I'm going to start down here to the right, very far end, Mr. G.
My name is Carl G. I've been in the insurance business for almost 40 years, and I'm a member of Springfield Baptist Church for the last 20 years.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nisha Ziegler. I work for a wealth management company, Advocacy Wealth Management. I've been in the industry for about 25 years and work with families to help them reach their financial goals. I look forward to talking to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl Freeman. I'm a local attorney here in Covington, Georgia, and my area of practices, specialty areas, is estate planning, which includes wills, trusts, probate and estate administration, as well as asset protection.
Great morning, everyone. My name is Aaron Barfield. I'm a CPA here in the state of Georgia and the owner and founder of Phoenix Financial Services, where we offer services for both businesses and individuals in accounting, compliance, and tax. Nice to meet you all.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Walton. I founded and am the head of the the Melio Group at Morgan Stanley. I've been with Morgan Stanley for 25 years. I'm an executive director and financial advisor. We work with a lot of corporate professionals, executives, and entrepreneurs with what we call comprehensive wealth planning. Look forward to speaking with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ira Baldwin. I'm a retired Army officer, serving 30 years in the Army, 4 combat tours. I am a active member of Post 77 American Legion and the Disabled American Veterans Chapter 55, Newton, Rockdale County. It's a pleasure being here this morning and looking forward to sharing some great information.
My name is Eric Lee, and you are all hired. Let's get to work. Let's get to work, everybody. All the experts are here.
So each of you play a role in helping families. From your perspective, what does financial stewardship truly mean? Who wants to start?
I'll start. For me, financial stewardship is not how much you own, but it's basically properly planning and wisely managing what you have. I think that's what financial stewardship is.
I would concur as well. I think that in our world, we work with helping families a lot. And what that means is guiding, advising, and providing wise counsel to families that want to actually do their part with accumulating and building wealth, regardless of what level they're located at that time. That would be financial stewardship.
I'll add, in addition to everything that's been spoken so far, financial stewardship is intentionality. So ultimately being intentional with where you're spending money, how you're spending your money, and what you're deciding to do with your money as opposed to just letting things happen.
How does faith or personal values influence the way you approach legacy and wealth planning?
Well, a few things. One is even thinking of financial stewardship. When you think about faith and your personal values, our job as a financial advisor is really to sit down and listen to you and understand your personal goals, objectives, and the values of your family. And so ultimately, just like the Bible talks about, there's a lot of scripture when it comes to money and wealth. And so part of what we do is try to help understand what your values are. And biblically, we talk about contentment. We talk about not borrowing debt, not co-signing. And one of the things that's in the Bible that's super important is seeking wise counsel. And so part of this exercise is, what we do in terms of managing money and being a good steward is really tied biblically as well. And it should be aligned with where you're going with your family.
That's a good dovetail. One of the things, from my perspective, is living within your means and enjoying life and having a great work-life play balance. That's something that myself personally, I did not do in the military because being a professional, I wanted to make sure that my country comes first and safe because we put things in a proper order. But we have to make sure that we put our financial situation in order, not only for ourselves, but for our families. And in doing so, you have to educate yourself. I brought a couple books here, 475 tax deductions, estate planning, living wills and trusts, be smart, pay zero taxes. You got to read, you got to learn, you have to educate yourselves, and you have to educate those that you're responsible for. That's my part.
I was just going to say, I think that a lot of times we talk about money and things around money. A lot of times we're not being intentional, as you mentioned before. And it's good to have an opportunity to sit down with yourself and determine what is most important to you, looking at your personal values, talking with your family about what your family values are before making moves that are financial. So I think before you sit down with somebody who is a professional, really having that conversation with yourself and your family to determine what's most important to you in making those decisions.
I'd say that all of us make decisions concerning our finances, concerning our life, and we've heard the adage, "A fool and his money soon depart," and many of us have been foolish with our money. And so when we learn biblical principles, we then have the opportunity to inject and those principles and really correct the bad decisions in which we made. So yes, I made a bad decision yesterday, but I don't have to make that decision tomorrow. I can make some adjustments, and it's okay to make those adjustments. So often we think that, well, I did it before, and let me do it again and see if it changes. And it doesn't change, but then let me do it again, maybe it'll change. And we go through that vicious cycle. So our faith is important, that we learn to apply biblical principles in our everyday decisions.
And just to touch on that topic, so just because you have certain personal values or faith, doesn't mean that everybody in your family thinks the same way. And so, Nisha, I know that you work with a lot of families that have received settlements from victims who may have passed away, or even if they haven't passed away, maybe living in a way that they weren't before. And what are some of the things that you see in terms of just having that forgotten to plan for those things, and what the family does with the inheritance?
Yep. So yes, our practice is niche in that we work with families a lot of times who are new to money, and they're receiving a large amount of money that they need it to last for the rest of their lives. And what we do often have to come back to is looking at what is most important for them. Many times people are trying to fill a void with money or possessions and things like that, when really it's important to kind of step back and talk about what is filling you up in ways that are not external, right? And so we have those conversations all the time with our families about that, because you do have to understand that, money and material items at the end of the day aren't going to make you happy. You have to come back to something that's going to give you purpose in order to really truly find happiness. So we have those conversations a lot.
So I know that if I were to leave tomorrow, my family wouldn't donate a dime, unless I told them to. I'm just kidding. But how do we get around those things with the tools that you talk about, Attorney Freeman, in terms of the wills, trust, and estates? How do we make sure that our will is carried out in a way that we want it to be done?
So if you're specifically talking about, as she was mentioning, coming to large sums of money, especially if you have minor children, or if you have relatives in your family that are not well with managing money, there are vehicles such as trusts where you can dictate how the money is to be dispersed and distributed, so that you can manage while you're not here how that money is handled.
So why do you believe generational wealth is such a critical conversation in today's Black community? Anyone?
Well, I think our community has a history of owning land. My family, my mom is one of 13. And so they grew up on a farm, so they have multiple acres of land. But I don't believe that our community has a history of having the tools and the education of how to pass that property on from generation to generation. So I believe having this conversation prepares families on sustainability of that land and resources that they have acquired.
I was just going to say that I think, when we've talked a little bit about the disparities earlier that we see in different communities in our community, I certainly feel passionate about seeing our people, be strategic in their assets and passing it down how they want it to be passed down. I think a lot of times when we talk about trust, people think I have to have a lot of money to have a trust, and that's a misconception. Anybody can have a trust. And so just having the conversation about what you want to have happen with your money is the first start, and we just don't do it enough. I think it's important to have conversations around money, your assets, big and small conversations, not wait until we've lost somebody to have that discussion.
I'll add to that as well and say we're growing up we're in a world right now that's not our friend. The world is designed, or this U.S. society right now is designed to take us back 30 years. And as a people, if we look at how the political agendas have been run, not just in the last 2 or 3 years, but this is a 30-year conversation, a lot of times politically, we're not taken serious because of our economic stability or lack of our economic stability. And so having buying power and being able to build our wealth as a people is extremely important. And how we do that is one family at a time. And so it comes back to everything that we're talking about. But if we're to be taken serious in this country, we got to have a foundation. That starts with cash, that starts with real estate, and that starts with investing in the stock market. The fastest way to accumulate wealth in this country over the past 100 years has always been stocks. And so in a world where our society now is really built around the growth of capitalism and participating in stocks and Fortune 100 companies really leading the way and innovating with ideas, the wealth gap continues to widen because we don't own stocks as a people. And so we want to talk about stocks, real estate, bonds. Those are all critical pieces, but that is the wealth building conversation or a main part of it that keeps allowing us to be left behind, unfortunately.
That's a very good point. There's also a darker side to legacy building, financial, solidifying your financial standing. We have a thing in our community, it's called the black tax. A lot of people are not necessarily familiar with the black tax. Because if you look at every family, you have that discussion about building wealth, about investing. So I talk all the time about that. But we have an idea of distrust and mistrust. You know, hey, I'm gonna put my money under the mattress. I'm not gonna put it in the stock market because, man, my buddy got burned in the stock market, you know. But that black tax is this simple. It's simple. In every family, you'll probably find that there's a person who is the lead, who's the knowledge, who's the go-to person. But at the same time, that's black tax that we say originate from Africa. It's the thought that, hey, you got the money, I need money, you can help me with your money. Can I borrow your money? So what that does is that it doesn't teach responsibility if we're constantly giving our friends, our relatives, our neighbors money all the time. In fact, this week, a friend of mine called me up. He says, Ira, you're the last resort, but man, you're the only one I can trust. Hey, I need $5,000. Hey, I need $5,000 too. But how can I help you if I give you $5,000? I got to put a new engine in my truck. I can't help you, my friend. Sometimes we have to say no, that hard no, because that's the teaching lesson. When are we going to teach that you have to prepare? We all have fallen short financially at some point. Hey, I've been in the military. We've had no paid dues. Veterans out there, how many veterans out there? Raise your hand. You probably know what I'm talking about. You've had those times where man, I got to eat at the dining facility or don't have enough money to go out to McDonald's or something. So we've been there. So we have to plan, but we also have to say no sometimes. But black tax, look it up.
And there's so much power in no. Because he's right, we have a lot of people in our family that rely on us, especially if you're the one that go-to person. And my family knows, for me, if you ask me for anything, then you open the door for me to come back and ask you something too. Because what you won't do is waste my money after you wasted yours, right? And so making sure that they understand that, me telling you no is because I love you, right? I do. And there's nothing wrong with asking them what their plan is and having them articulate that or even write it out, because we're not going to be able to build generational wealth if we continue to issue out money for wasted things. If you can't afford to go on the trip, don't go on the trip. If you can't afford the shoes, you don't need them. And so just making sure that even our children understand those things and how to work and earn in the value of the dollar. So it doesn't matter if it's a brother, a sister, or a child, teaching them the value of what you've earned and how you want to continue to build. We're not going to do that by dishing out our money at a 0% interest rate return. So we talked about trust. We mentioned trust. And so, Nisha, can you explain to us what a trust is and how does someone know that they need it? Not Nisha, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Cheryl.
okay. So a trust, there are two types of trust. There's a revocable living trust, which is the most common you probably have heard about, and an irrevocable trust. So trusts are basically legal instruments that are used to manage your property and transfer your property upon your passing. The irrevocable trust, and I know we'll get to that, but I'll just go ahead and mention it, basically is used for more tax planning and asset protection. You generally would need a trust if you own real estate. If you want to avoid probate, trusts are good vehicles to avoid probate and the time and expense of probate. And also, if you own real estate property in this state or out of state, it's a good vehicle to use to transfer your property.
And Attorney Freeman, can you tell us when should someone create a will and what are the key steps to ensure it's legally sound and accessible?
At a minimum, every adult should have a will. Like Ms. Reed indicated in her opening, that you have something to leave. So at minimum, you need a will. If you do not have a will, basically the laws of Georgia will dictate how your property will be transferred, which creates confusion and police escorts for probate attorneys, as she mentioned. So a will needs to be signed by you as the person making the will, and it also needs to be witnessed by two people that are not receiving any property in the will. Those are the legal requirements for a will.
And who should have access to that will, or where should they leave it so that at least the family knows that there is a will in place?
I generally recommend not to put it in a safety deposit box because that creates more issues after someone passes away. I generally recommend keeping it in a safe place where you keep all your important documents, and also letting the person who you nominated as the executor or trustee know where you're leaving the will, as well as one family member also. And I also recommend that you talk to your family members about your wishes, so that after you pass away, there still isn't confusion about what your wishes were when you passed away,
So most times when people pass, family members are scrambling around trying to figure out if they had a will or how can we get access to the accounts. One of the things that I approached recently was a family love letter. I'm not sure if you've used that in any of your practice, Cheryl, but can you talk about the family love letter and what that entails?
So if I think I'm understanding a letter of instruction or?
So the one that I've seen recently is just a list of things that, one, accounts, passwords, where certain things are located, who has access, and a list of actually everything that you own, even outside the will, because the will is going to be very general in terms of what you have, but I need to be able to get into the computer,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Or I don't know where the keys are to the safety deposit box.
Yes. So I do agree with, especially passwords. I am representing a client now whose son passed away, and all of his pictures and everything is in his Apple iCloud. And so he does not have access or the password to that iCloud. So we're in the process of going through probate and filing a motion based on some federal laws that would allow Apple to provide the family access to those documents. So I would say make a list of all of your accounts, where they're located, all of your online accounts and their passwords. Of course, you want to keep all of that in a secure place. And you may only want to tell one trusted family member about that location, so that we do run into the scenario after people pass away, other family members come in and start accessing accounts without the authority to do so. So one trusted safety member for that type of document.
Cheryl, can you tell us what is a medical directive and why is it so important to have one in place?
A medical directive, or it's also known as an advance directive for healthcare, is used to kind of plan out your wishes in the event you were admitted to a hospital or you suffer a medical condition where you're not able to make those decisions for yourself. It allows you to make a determination if you are diagnosed with a terminal condition or if you're in a state of permanent unconsciousness, which is the scenario you may all know about where you're on life support, what you want done in those scenarios. And so you also would like a trusted family member who knows what your wishes are and how you would like that situation to be handled as your agent for your advance directive for healthcare. That type of document is a living, what we call a living document, which means it's only valid while that person is alive. So when that person passes away, that agent no longer has authority to act.
And see, a lot of this planning actually saves your family some money and headache because Cheryl's telling you that they're in court trying to get access to a phone when we can simply make sure that we have the right things in place to prevent having to waste all that time and resources.
And
So-
expensive.
Exactly.
One of the things I wanted to add in there is that I know that Apple does have a legacy contact that you can add in there. And so I don't know if you've seen this already, but if you look in your Apple settings, then you can add in a contact that if something happens to you, then they can access your information.
You might want to put that one in your notes. So I'm going to switch over to insurance. Mr. G, how much insurance is enough, and what factors should people consider when determining coverage levels?
That's a loaded question. I would say that a person really would need to, if you're married, ask your wife how much insurance is enough and see what she has to say about it.
You're the right person.
Insurance is people have different attitudes about insurance and what's enough. Short story, early in my insurance career, I met with a couple. The husband worked, stay-at-home wife, and he asked me, and she was pregnant, had a child. And so he asked me, I'm going through the list and I'm telling him that just to determine how much insurance is needed, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 times your annual salary. And I said 10 to 20. And so he looked at me and said, that's too much. I said, too much? I said, she's not working. You're the only one working. You're working as a manager at Toys R Us. So what happens to her and your children in the event that you pass away? Well, she can go back and stay with her mom and daddy. Okay, he had this attitude. And so I got an attitude with him. And I looked at him, I said, you don't love your wife. He looked at me, what do you mean? I said, you're willing to jeopardize their future because you think that 10 times the amount of your salary is too much? I looked at her and I said, well, whenever he decides to love you like a husband ought to, you can call me or call somebody else and they'll provide that insurance. And I walked out the door. So people have some misconceptions about how much insurance is enough, and it really depends upon what your objectives are. Typically, we tell people that anywhere from 10 to 20 times your annual salary. Now, can they afford that sometimes? No. So let's start small, and let's move up the ranks. And so there are fact finders in which we have, or needs analysis, that will show how much is acceptable. But ultimately, it's based on what they can afford.
So what types of insurance should families prioritize for long-term protection?
Now, what kind of long-term protection are we talking about?
So are there any plans that you could actually use to your benefit while you're living, or maybe in a place where you may need to go into a home, or, you know, protecting your home if you pass away?
So there is long-term care insurance that takes care of some of those needs. Long-term care insurance is expensive. Many of us have life insurance policies that have living benefits, and those living benefits will pay out if certain events happen. You get a heart attack, stroke, incapacitated, things like that. So it really depends upon your policy and what it says. Some of the older policies may not have those benefits in. The newer policies that are sold today, most of them have it, whether it's a term policy or a cash value policy. They will have those living benefits.
Do single people without dependents really need life insurance?
I'm going to say yes. I have written life insurance on several single people, and one of the things that first of all, as you said earlier, they will pass away at some point, and someone has to bury them. So why should I come out of my pocket just to bury you? So then the other is that they have this. One of the persons that I wrote a policy on, she decided to leave her church as a beneficiary to her policy. So we went through that process, getting information about the church, putting it on the application, and policy is issued. So it happens to her today, the church is going to receive those benefits.
So now we're going to turn to financial planning and wealth management. And Jesse, Nisha, anybody on the panel could definitely respond, but how can someone begin building wealth even if they feel they're starting late?
Okay, I'll start.
I can get you guys to speak into the mic because we're streaming,
Okay.
so we want everybody to.
So I think the first thing is to start and to meet with a professional to talk about what it is that you ultimately want to accomplish, because I think even starting small can make a big difference. And to Jesse's point earlier about, you know, you don't have to have large sums of money to start investing. I think that's one of the big misconceptions about investing. There's ways that you can do it incrementally with, you know, a percentage of what you're making, automatically having it saved. So I think one of the big advice that I give people who are just starting is to pay yourself first, is to literally put money into an account that's either a savings or an investment account before you have it come to your checking account. Because when you see that amount that you have available to spend, the likelihood is you're going to spend it, versus paying yourself and putting into investments first and then working from the residual.
I will add to what Nisha said in that there's no magic age for building wealth or saving money or investing. They're all really interconnected. And if you break things down by generations, the silent generation, the baby boomer generation, the Gen X generation, the Gen Z generation, Gen Z actually knows about investing from a very young age, different from the silent generation, totally different. And so we have clients and we have a lot of clients that are baby boomers that actually went to college, had a chance to get a really good job, and as they came out of college, they were able to save in 401ks, and so they got brought in fairly early as well. But from time to time, we meet people that have not, for some reason, maybe did not invest, and maybe they're 50, 55 years old, but I've also seen them be intentional and save $1 million by the time they're 70. And so there's no magic age, and when you think about investing, it takes time, discipline, and vision, and a lot of intentionality around doing that. And so age really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about purpose, and it's about being a good steward of your resources. So even if you are retired and you got money building up in a savings account, it's not a good steward to just let it sit there and earn 2%. When you can go out here and make it earn 7, 8, 9, 10%. And it doesn't mean you need to put every dime in the stock market. That's not the point. So a lot of this is around being a good steward, and whatever wealth you have, you got to be able to run your own race and do your best to put the next generation of your family in the best position possible.
Great point, and I was just going to ask you a question about that. So You know, you're telling me that just placing my money in a savings account is not building wealth?
No.
So what's the difference?
Savings, in my opinion, would be just putting money in a bank account. So you have an account at Bank of America. You say, hey, let me put this money over here, and I need it for a rainy day. Unfortunately, in life, y'all know this, rainy days happen all the time. There is always something nibbling at your money. As though there's always somebody asking you for your money, like the black tax. And if you're that person in your family, or primary provider for the family, you know, you probably have a lot of obligations. But savings would be, to me, like putting away money for emergency cash. And emergency cash is the most underrated thing in this country. If you look at the numbers across the board, white families, ultimately, if something happens to them, they have savings of upwards to 200 days to 300 days to survive. If you look at, and this was a study done by the banks, and if you look at black families, the number is like 10 days. So we ain't got enough money to save. If you lost your job, you can't hold your house down for 10 days. But that's what savings is for. You want that number to be anywhere from 3 months to 12 months, give or take what sector or industry, what you do for a living. Longer term, you want to be able to be intentional about investing. And so that money is not sitting in a savings account. It's doing something that's really working a lot harder for you. And, you know, that's where you can really grow and build wealth and see your money double every 7 to 10 years.
The other thing that I just wanted to add to what he was saying is I want to encourage all of us, as he's mentioning, to get in some form of investment where our money is growing faster than the cost of things is going up. We can all talk about how costs are rising, how things are unfortunately very expensive now. And when we have things like savings accounts, or we have money in our mattresses, in bank accounts, where it's not outpacing the market, we're effectively losing that money because our money is becoming less valuable. So we want to get with a professional so that our money is growing faster than the costs of things are rising.
So how can families have honest and productive conversations about money across generations?
All right, I'm gonna jump in here because I was kind of passionate about this one. Unfortunately, a lot of us come from a similar background where we didn't have a lot of insight into what our household money looked like. So there was an education gap to where our parents were doing enough to get by. We knew we had what we needed, but we didn't know exactly where we were when it came to money. So my encouragement is making sure that we're having those educational, in some cases, tough conversations about money and real conversations about where we've been and where we are now. The Bible talks about how we've overcome by the word of our testimony. And our testimony can be as simple as saying, mommy and daddy or whoever you're talking to didn't have at one point, but we did A, B, C, D, and now we're doing better. So don't make the mistakes we did or don't do what we did, and have that tough conversation, a very direct conversation, because there is a real stewardship that comes from challenge. It's real, where we learn and we don't do things based on what we've come from. That can't be taught. But what can be taught is the lessons we learned and everything we got in those challenges.
What I will add to that is when you think about building multi-generational wealth, communication is like the number one thing. It doesn't matter whether you have $100 to your name or $100 million to your name. In a world where we as black families have a lot of blended families, where we have a lot of mistrust, but that does not mean that members of our family weren't successful. But if you want to build generational wealth, there has to be some clear lines around communication. And everything about leaving a legacy is not all tied to financial. And what I mean by that is there are 3 forms of legacy. One is your knowledge. And so families have a lot of knowledge. Maybe you didn't build a lot of wealth, a lot of liquid wealth or stocks or bonds. But maybe you were an entrepreneur and you basically were a great entrepreneur that provided for your family for 40 years. There's knowledge there that you can pass down. Your character is another form of legacy that you can really pass down. And again, maybe same example, person was a high integrity, very well known in the community. And at the end of the day, you can pass that down to your kids. And the last is really around financials. And so, but you have to communicate, and it's very important for kids to understand, kids, this is how I made this money. It took me and your mom 50 years to get to this number. And what we don't want to do is see you wait when we die to see you blow it in 5. But you got to have these conversations, and we all have family reunions. We all do different things, but we have to be very intentional about sitting down and sharing family stories and family dialogue and setting missions and setting philosophies and setting values around the purpose of what your family was brought here to do and the legacy over the generations that's been put in place. And if you do that, there's a better shot at the next generation coming along and living that same purpose and dream.
I'd like to add to that. My wife and I started talking with our children when they were young, about money, because they see us spending money at the grocery store and, wherever we take them. So what is $1? What is that penny? What is that? So, and my wife she bought, how you have these little maps, all 50 states, and had the little quarters in them. And so when we get a quarter, and they'd have that, put it in this one, put it in that one. So we started young with our children as far as that conversation is concerned. And then as they saw us buying different things, well, where'd you get the money? Their perception was you just pull out a card and that's all. That's all it is. And they don't know what happens that you pulled out the card, but then there's a bill that comes behind that, and you got to pay that bill off. But in their minds, it was just you just pull out a card. And so having those conversations with them starts young, and also it goes in stages. Our daughter, she decided that she wanted to start looking for a house. Well, then she started asking us about going through that process. We didn't think about telling her about that when she was in college. It happened when she got ready. And so, once again, but we had already established the boundaries, or not the boundaries, but the open communication to where she could come to us, ask us those various questions about different stages that she's entering into. So I think it starts young, but it also goes into different stages of life. And even as we are older, we're having these conversations now about what to do with us in the event of a disability or death. What are our wishes at this point? And so those are some challenging conversations because it's a reality check.
And especially for the younger generation now, because they just see you tap a phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like magic to them.
Right.
So at when is it too young, or what is the appropriate age now? Because you have a kid that's like, oh, I have a mommy's phone, or I have a phone, and I have Cash App or Apple Pay. They don't really see the dollar like we used to. How do you explain to them, what money means in a way that they can understand at a very early age?
Let me take a little stab at that. I have a set of twin grandsons. I have 4 grandsons total. And my twin grandson says, "Grandpa, are you rich?" I said, "Yes, I am very rich. I have you 2 guys. You're my broke best buddies now." And as grandparents, we like to splurge on our grandkids. But there's also that lesson that we can teach them there. Mm-hmm. And so when they have that conversation with the grandkids, and they'll ask, say, "Hey, can I have this? Can I have that?" I say, "No, choose one. It's 2 of you, share." Teaching them that responsibility, and then showing them by setting the example. It just never too, how do we learn as kids? We learn by our games that we play. We have to teach them, and we have to participate with them. And I tell you, if you want to learn something, a kid will teach you. So I'll leave it at that.
So even like my niece, she is 14 now, but a few years back, I made her start working for things that she asked for. I don't mind. Everybody will tell you, my family works for me. And so, she would ask for something, and I was like, you know what? You can come to Auntie's office, and you can file papers. and I would pay you so much per hour. So that way she understands, well, okay, well, I only made $20, but here I am asking for something that's 30. And so she starts to understand, you know what, I didn't earn enough to get this. And so there are certain things that you can do and tie it into chores or whatever to just show them that there's some work going behind this dollar. And if you don't work for it, you don't get it. And so I think that people forget that, and everybody wants to say, well, you know what, I want my kids to have it better than I did. Well, that's not really helping them right now.
Right.
I was going to say that I think we should normalize these conversations. I have 2 daughters in college, and I, oftentimes will open up my investment accounts. They see exactly what's in there. We have conversations about how it got to where it is, what I'm doing to. So, I mean, even though they still don't quite understand all the concepts, we keep building, right? And so I think it's important just normalize those. If you're going to see your advisor, going to see a professional, bring your child with you. So they just start to hear the dialogue, and maybe it doesn't make sense the first time, but over time it will.
The only other thing I was going to add is going back to what Carl said a moment ago. I have 3 young ones. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So we're having conversations that are based on their age and where they are. My oldest daughter, I love her, but she loves to eat out. So recently, she asked me for a Zaxby's grilled cheese. She said, I want a grilled cheese. I said, we'll make you a grilled cheese. She said, I want one from Zaxby's. I said, okay. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to your piggy bank. You're going to get your money out of your piggy bank, and we're going to go to Zaxby's and get you a grilled cheese, something that you pay for. And there was another situation where she asked for something to be bought, and I said, okay, instead of us going out to get it, you're going to pay me to do it. So I had her go, again, to her piggy bank, and she brought me the money, and I made what it was that she wanted at the house so that she understands that exchange of, if I want something, I have to give something up that I may or may not have earned, but in any case, there is an exchange for it. It's not something that just comes.
So, Mr. Barfield, can you tell us what role does tax planning play in generational wealth, in creating generational wealth?
Absolutely. Summary and the easiest I can say is tax planning helps each and every one of us keep more of what we earn to pass it down without the government putting its hands on it. So the better I do in working with a planner and advisor on the tax side of things, the more money that I can keep to either use or to pass down, as opposed to it going to government, federal, state, local, or whoever else has their hands out for my hard-earned money.
Are there any overlooked tax advantages that families should be taking better advantage of?
So from a tax planning conversation, the answer is yes and no. The reason I always say it's yes and no is it depends. It depends on where you are and what you have. I apologize, I cannot remember my brother who has the VA, but he has a book that has 457 tax strategies or tax advantages in the book. The beauty of that is it's great. They're all there. They're all available. There are not necessarily any hidden tax gems, but it's all based on what you are, or where you are and what you have. I can talk all day about Section 1031, like kind exchanges, or I can talk about depreciation, or I can talk about EV credits. But if you don't have a rental property, or you don't have an electronic or electric vehicle, or you don't own some real estate, then it's just me talking in the air. So it's all about having a conversation based on where you are, what you have, and then finding what's applicable to your situation.
Thank you. Major Baldwin, can you speak on the connection between VA benefits and legacy building for veterans and their families?
The hearings.
Can you speak on the connection between VA benefits and legacy building for veterans and their families?
Well, I'll try, take a stab at it. Let's see here. Legacy for veterans, VA benefits. One of the things that veterans are faced with on a daily basis is the question is, how can I get my benefits? I've served my nation. I've been injured, whether in combat or in training, peacetime or war, or I've developed an illness, or I've been exposed to something. So now that I've served my nation, what can I do to receive compensation? Compensation to kind of get me back to where I was when I was an 18-year-old man, joining the military, healthy, but now I've broke back, hurt back, hurt knees, ankles, or mind is not in the right place, things like that. So how do we get back? Well, there's that approach that, well, you have from the VA side, from Veterans Affairs side, you have the Veterans Benefits. Veterans Benefits in the form of compensation. So that part helps to compensate the veteran because you do not join the military to get rich by any means. Then you also have the VA, the health side, where it cares for the body, the minds, things like that. So it's a two-pronged approach to comprehensive veteran care. So next, we want to consider this here. When I'm applying for benefits of such, well, sometimes in a veteran's mindset, either through lack of knowledge or just we'll say, you know what, I'm going to go hire, nothing against lawyers and other agencies for profit, if you will, that there are agencies out there, like I'm a lifetime member of the Disabled American Veterans. It didn't cost a dime, not a penny, to come seek our help, our assistance in getting those benefits. You have other non-governmental organizations, the American Legion, of which I'm also a lifetime member, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, which I'm also a lifetime member, that we advocate for the veterans. We help them apply for benefits, also their family members to apply for benefits because you have the representation there for you. We advocate for you. We go to bat for you in Congress to get those benefits and maintain those benefits and get those benefits increased all the time. So you have a friend when you have those veterans organizations working for you. Now, with that, veterans outreach programs, I think understand that Newton-Rockdale County has the Veterans Court. So those are things there to assist veterans and to, sometimes we do some stuff that we may need some assistance with. So those are programs. The veterans are I think, very wholesome people. And like humans, we make mistakes. So we have a veteran outreach court to help us get through those problems. We have veterans suicide hotlines that are available. Again, I'm not going to share all the information out here because I have a lot of material on the desk. When we have the breakout session, we can talk one-on-ones and twos there. But there are a lot of programs out there for veterans. We talked about the survivors benefit programs. We do have veterans group life insurance products out there. We do also have an opportunity, for instance, the state of Georgia, you have national cemeteries. And oftentimes, veterans, we fail to do the diligent work of preparing ourselves and our families for our eventual death. So sometimes, yes, we do have those GoFundMe tools, but also there's the death and indemnity compensation by which, for instance, myself as a 100% disabled American veteran, I get an automatic $10,000 life insurance policy. That's just to help me defray the cost for burial expenses. For instance, you'll see national cemeteries. Everyone's very familiar with Arlington National Cemeteries, but right here in Georgia, we have 2 national cemeteries. One is located up in Marietta. I think one is 75 North. I can't think of the name of the cemetery particularly. And then also you have Milledgeville Cemetery. So you do have places by which you can be buried for free of charge to include family members. So those things are out there. Again, I have that information I can provide for you out there on site during our breakouts.
Thank you. All right, so last question, and then we're going to go ahead and move into the cafe area for a quick break, and then we'll split you all up into 3 groups. So Pastor Lee, last question. How can faith communities play a stronger role in encouraging financial literacy and generational planning?
We've got to be willing to have the hard discussions, to have the intergenerational discomfort. I started pastoring 26 years ago when I was 6 years old. And one of the things that I had hoped for in administration of our tenure was to move people from renters to buyers, to move people from living from paycheck to paycheck, to experiencing a greater discipline. And one of the things I remember saying back then is, maybe you don't need more money, and maybe you just need to work the money you already have better than you're doing right now. I look back in 26 years, and we've had mixed success in moving people from renters to buyers, and moving people to a more independent place of living. We're seeing so much of the world's influence and the world's demands on the family choke the wealth of people. But we're also recognizing that that's affecting the church at large. 500 charitable giving is up in America in 2024, up by 3% to almost 600 billion. And it's going to take it's going to take these conversations where it looks like we don't have our hand on the scale. Springfield is not interested in you. We're not so much interested in making a certain people rich. We're not just interested. We didn't bring these people here today just because there was a deal made with them. We brought them here for the education. And if you can do business with them, wonderful. But we brought people who we knew could bless people with the education that's necessary to move the needle on a much more macro level than just a micro level. And so I hope that answers your question. But the conversations and having these moments where we can talk to people that we trust, and not people who are just looking for another cash grab. The church has been exploited by people, who have sold insurance and who have the quickest get-rich scheme. I've seen so many get-rich schemes come through the church. Y'all remember travel? You could sell vacations, you could sell Melaleuca, you could sell Amway, and all of those things require, that kind of pyramid kind of thing that the church seems to be the perfect place to do. But we want to do it. We want to do the education in such a way that we look like we don't have our hand on the scale, but we give you the information that you need to make those decisions that you need to make as an individual.
Thank you. All right, so a QR code was on the screen earlier. If I could get the team to put that QR code back on the screen. I want you to make sure you scan the QR code, because there will be a link to every presenter that's here today that has their bio, that has their company information, so that you can follow up with them. It also has a layout of the agenda as well, I believe. And so, all right, now we're going to go ahead and release you to the cafe area so that you can grab a quick little snack, and we're going to split you up into 3 groups.